So in this segment, which is called Time Equals Art, we're going to talk about how some masterpieces take time, how the influence of time is very important in our existence, not only personal, but collective and throughout, and to moving us from this imperfect, this potential, to this perfect and this actual of what we're doing, you know? So the ancient Maya taught a beautiful principle: time equals art. With patience, growth, and experience, life itself becomes a creative process. In this final segment, we explore why creativity can't be rushed, why transformation unfolds in seasons, and how each of us is slowly becoming a work of art in progress. So let me start this off because this is a topic that I talk about a lot. And you know, we understand that the universe works through patterns, it works through sequences, and that, you know, God created this original sequence, and we come from that sequence, and you know, we're kind of participating, and that's why we can co-create, because we follow these rules. And I always point out music. You know, music, it has a sort of notes, and you can play them as it is, but if you do not follow certain rules, if you do not look at the harmony, see in what key it is, see, and you know, that key has the possibility for these notes to be played, and maybe there's a couple that you cannot play because it causes dissonance, and how that harmony progresses, because that's what it is, it's a progression, and how you put together that harmony and you put in rhythm, and suddenly you've created through a very specific architecture of laws, but you've created a beautiful masterpiece. When you take all that law out, you know, it's I always said that you don't need to be a musician to enjoy music. You just need to be a human to really enjoy it. But it does work through these let's say structures of order. So I wanted to take you. I wanted to have your take on this, you know, and how this works, and how you express your art, and how do you come through this creative process, especially in music. How do you feel that? Because in some cases, it's not like you're going, oh, A minor goes to C, then goes to no, no, no. You just feel the
I
notes.
don't
It
know
takes
that.
you over there. You're not thinking about the math. But can you tell us a little bit of that experience in your life?
Well, for me, yeah, music is like I have a son that's autistic and he
Okay.
took piano. And he told us one day, he says, Mom, he says, it's not hard. It's just mathematics put to a tune. And so he could see this beat and this movement and the letters, notes going up and down the scale as a mathematical thing to him. And I thought, that's really wild because a lot of people wouldn't look at it that way. For me, music was kind of like that. It's like the song comes in my head as one thing, not as words, and then later with music. If I have a
Okay.
song, it comes with everything already there, the music, and I have to put it down as such. And
Okay.
since I don't write music and I don't play an instrument, I have to do it through my voice or
That's your
and work with
instrument.
it
Your voice is
through
your
Suno.
instrument. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I'll hum it or sing it or do whatever. And I used to have a couple friends that would write it down for me on paper. But then I started using the Suno and messing around with the AI and getting it to do that for me till it got to the tune that I had in my head. And it takes a long time. It's a real creative process.
Yeah, yeah.
And at first I thought, well, that's cheating, but it's really not because it's yours. You tweak it and change it and tell it what you want in there, and it plays it. You don't like it, you delete it, you do it again, you change this or that, and until you come out with the song that you had in mind, that
Yeah.
was in your head to begin with. And so it's a tool, and I see it only as a tool. And for me, that tool allows me to be more creative with what I have in the poetry and the words of my songs. So and it is a process, but it's I don't know. I'm a kind of an inspired type person. I get an inspiration, then I take it and go with it. And some people just write and write and write until they get the words they want, and then they write and write and write until they get the song that they want.
Hmm.
And which is a perfectly good process. That's their
Yeah.
process. Everyone has their own process. I feel inspired by something, a sentence or something someone said to me or something I read, or I just pray and feel inspired. And so then I sit down and start the process of writing through this thing. And it's just like, it's like doing a math problem, when you start, you have to go all the way to the end and
Yeah.
complete it because otherwise you've got an equation that doesn't mean anything. And so it's a creative process
Oh, I agree. I agree. And I
for
lived through,
everyone.
yeah, I lived through the whole technological change from, analog classical instruments to the digital world that we have now with AI that you, like you said, it's a tool, it's still a tool, like any instrument is a tool of expressing your creative part. But now it's a more sophisticated tool that can do many other things. And that, I remember that one of the great things that we do used to say about the beatboxes, that would do the drums, is that now you can get rid of the drummer and there's not, just making noise in the back, you can get rid of that. But in a way, it's interesting how that process has evolved. When I started doing music, you couldn't really record anything. I mean, you played, it was live. I'm talking about the 90s. And then you would maybe get a Porta Studio, which you would record in a cassette, and maybe that would you separate 8 tracks. Or then there was the ADAT, and there was still no computers. I mean, the only thing that you would have mixer, and the ADAT was just a VHS recorder. That's where it recorded the music, and you could hook up to, and instead of
Right.
having just 8 channels, you'd have 16 channels, very analog. But in the end, you could not see how nowadays you see the waveform and you can cut it and you can do. Then the world moved into Pro Tools and into all the digital or the applications or software, which and before you had the big equipment that had to be hooked up, and then you got started getting the plugins, and it got to a point where you only need a computer to create everything. And now you don't even need to be have to go to school to even know what the structure is. If you can feel it with AI, and you can tell with a prompt, and you can tweak it with a prompt, then suddenly that is compressed, and it's very practical for you. So anybody that has that creative spark, they do not have to go through all that learning process. They do not have to go and, it's really hard to get a studio and you have to pay and get all that. But now it's in the tip. And this is what I want to stress out. We live in a very modern world that everything is at the tip of your fingers, and your creative spark is so easy nowadays to be fed that you wouldn't believe, right?
Right. And it's like you were saying, is an example of that is when Sooners started, they had a few people. And within 2 or 3 months, they had so many people they couldn't keep it online. People were shutting them down. There were so many people online at one time. And it was just an example to show you that once people found that instrument that allowed them to release their creativity, they they just went with it. And
Yeah.
it's just people from all over the world are just creating music constantly all day long, all night long. And it's formed a whole community of people that are working together now, and they're publishing their music on different platforms that would have never let them you would have never had access to
Yeah.
before this, because you had to go through the record companies or people like that in order to get access to the publishing side of it. And
Yeah.
now you can just publish your song and
Yeah.
it goes straight. straight to wherever it is. So and it opens up avenues. And so it's like anything math and science and the arts, they open up the avenue to creativity. All these people working in these uh fields are extremely creative. Some people don't think of an astrophysicist as being a creative person, but he takes what he finds and he creates a theory and then he goes and proves that theory. And that is extremely creative.
Oh, but yes,
And that's
definitely.
something I could never do.
Me
It
either.
makes music look easy.
Yeah, yeah,
So, so like I'm saying, everybody can express their creativity and their talent and their knowledge and stuff if they really take the time to look inside themselves and figure out what it is that makes them happy. And that's what it really comes down to.
yeah.
Creativity makes you happy. It fulfills that need inside of you to be to leave something behind or
Yeah.
to be known in the world as this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I have.
Like you were saying a bit earlier, it gets your authenticity out there. You're authentic, and it's the greatest expression of who that personality is, and it's interesting because it also involves vulnerability. You when you create art, and I remember when I started doing poetry, I kind of was shy at the beginning. What are they gonna think? But suddenly, if you're genuine, if you're putting your heart in there, if you're really expressing, that really touches. It dispels all the barriers, and it touches you in an emotional and your feelings. So that's really important to recognize that as well.
There are authors that have been asked and artists that have been asked, who did you paint this for or who did you write this for? And they will tell you, I did all this for myself. I did this to I painted this picture because it's what I saw in my head. It's what I needed to create. And I wasn't worried about how you interpreted it or they interpreted it, whether they
Yeah,
liked it or
yeah,
they didn't
exactly.
like it. And that's what's the main step of being creative. You've got to get away from what other people think because your creativity will stand for itself and you will be
Definitely.
so surprised at what people will say. Well, I could never have done that. You're so creative. But, and I always answer that with, you could do that when you find what you're creative at.
Definitely, definitely, and I think it's a whole process of discovery, of refinement, of practice, of habit. And then you start living your life in art. That's why I like this concept. And let me go into what I commented or I said in the introduction. The concept of time equals art. And their concept or the mind concept of time is that it's not linear. You're not starting like in this and you're going forward in time. It's all radial, and it's like a spiral that time is compacting, and then you jump from one leap. You do like a quantum leap of one sequence to the next sequence. So I really like this because, in a way, since we're radio, we're repeating. That's why sometimes it's like, oh, this is happening again, or why am I always, if you don't learn the lesson, the universe is gonna bring it as long as many times as needed for you to learn it. And this is the concept that you're in this. So let's say that you're in this loop and you do not learn and you don't know, you don't move forward in this spiral. You're gonna stay stuck in there. But it's the same thing, in how, like I always say, if you understand one system, one mechanism, and everything is relatable, then you can understand the other. So if we understand art and how it works and how it's a process and how it's not just coming up, oh, here's the song, but it is a creative process. It is putting yourself out there. If we compare that to life, it is also, our life has become more artful, and that's why we have to live it. Because some people, they come to the end of their life and they maybe haven't really realized anything, or they haven't really felt fulfilled in any ways. But if we live, and that's why I always say carpe diem when I close the show, because if you live every day, doesn't mean that you have to, work your butt off. it also means that you can rest and you can really take in creation, but it's really making each day count, making each step a step forward in this time equals art concept, and you becoming art and you becoming this perfected being that you will become, and that falls into what the concept of the supreme is in the Urantia book. We're all part of this. God has different attributes, and one of them, or qualities, and one of them is that we are all part of God, and we are all evolving as a being into this perfection and into being this God the Supreme, right?
Right. What I've found too is that there's one thing that's extremely important, and that's rest. And I don't mean sleep, I mean rest. I mean taking a day off. Jesus took a day off with his apostles every week.
Yeah,
They played, they went and visited their family, they went and fished, they did whatever was it, but it wasn't what they were working on. It
yeah,
was other things. They got away from it for a little while. And I think what people leave off and don't find their creativity is the fact that they never take enough time to rest,
yeah,
to really find out what it is that drives them, because all this came up in my leisure time. It didn't come up when I was working because I had to put it on the back burner. I'm working.
yeah,
I have to do this or that. And when I learned to be quiet, and when I learned how to really absorb the universe around me, is when I found my creativity. So it's very important for people to rest.
yeah. And we take it for granted, but it is very important because that really gets your mind off, just the loop that you're in, and that really opens up and even gives you more ideas. It's always when I come back to work after vacation that I have the best ideas, or that I have the more creative ideas, because I just stepped out of that, that loop or that rut, and saw it in a different perspective and more creative perspective now that I'm rested, and then my head is not in that loop, not to
Right.
be redundant. So it's really important. I totally agree with you, Deborah.
It's really exciting to
Yeah,
know that people can be creative, and it's real exciting to know that I'm creative and that you're creative and that the world together can create something even bigger than ourselves.
yeah. Creation itself, that's what it is. Well, it's been really a good conversation, and time has flown. When you're being creative and talking about beautiful art, truth, beauty and goodness, and all these things, it just flies away. So, any closing remarks you want to include before we close, Deborah?
No, I think if you would allow me, I would like to read one of my poems.
Yes, please. And by the way, we're gonna put some of your music later. You're gonna be hearing
Oh,
it
okay.
throughout, and we're gonna edit that. But yes,
Okay. This one I call Let Go, Let God. It says, I find it impossible to let go, let God. I cling to my fears and insecurities, counting my failures, trying to balance heaven on a scale of deeds. I search for ways to add up points to reach heaven. If I do this, if I do that, they'll surely be worthy at last. Yet deep inside, I already know God forgave my indiscretions before I ever asked. His mercy was written over my name long before I tried to earn it. His mercy is the only pass I need, the only door, the only way. And still I stand outside, hands gripping chains that are already unlocked. The only obstacle in my path is me. I am the one blocking the way, not his judgment, not his silence, only my refusal to receive. Open my heart to the truth. Give me courage. Give me strength to recognize and accept His love. For His love is the only key I need to enter the kingdom I seek. And the gate was never locked, only my fear was. So teach me to loosen my grip. Teach me to trust what is already given, to let go and let God.
love it, love it. Let go and let God, as always. Well, thanks for that, Debra. I think it was a nice way to close this podcast. So thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure. Um, And thank all of you for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Although we have the podcast basically all week long, we have new episodes. But be sure to put the reminder button. And if you hear something or you like what we're saying, tell people that we are having these conversations so that they may also find truth, beauty, and goodness in what we bring. So until next time, I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem.
On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.